Alright fellas, we're right back at Pokemon Masters, and tomorrow we're getting the re-release of Neo Champion Bede and Galarian Articuno, as of course we got yesterday Neo Champion Hop, and the day before that we got Champion Marnie's rerun. Again, these characters only last a week, so keep that in mind when summoning for them. It's literally have pity, or you're not getting them. Pretty much. And of course, anniversary is near, so you have to be very decisive on what you want to pick up, so keep all of that in mind. But we're going to take a relook at Bede's kit here today. He got himself a buff with the EX roll of Sprint, which is easily the best EX roll he could have gotten, for sure. Strike wouldn't have done much for him, Tech wouldn't have done much. Field would have been fine, for sure, but that would limit him a bit more in terms of his team support. So Sprint, of course, is more of a catch-all safety net that still, of course, applies a good effect. And it does help him out in more than one way, because of course, Sprint on a lot of supports tends to not be that great. Or sorry, Sprint is always great on supports. Let me restate that. The stats are not really that great. The speed and HP is nice, but the fact that it buffs offenses over defenses tends to not be too helpful for supports. But in Bede's case, it does. This buffs his special attack to being over 300, which is relatively respectable. And despite the fact that I don't think Bede actually has any damaging multipliers, it still does apply enough to where he's actually going to be able to do some somewhat consistent DPS damage, as long as you have the gauge for it. Despite being a support, right? Like, of course, he's not going to be out damaging a lot of psychic type sync pairs damage-wise, right? But he's going to be actually able to apply damage in terms of downtime where he's not going to be able to buff the team, or he's just going to be doing damage anyway, right? So keep all of that in mind with this guy. That's pretty good to consider, frankly. So I guess let's go ahead and, continue to look at his kit. So without any well, with 6-star EX investment and no EX roller in level 140, he has 879 health, 284 speed, 357 special defense, 347 physical defense, and 284 special attack. Not bad stats all around at all, for sure. 350-ish defenses is great, health is good, speed is honestly pretty subpar, but that's not really the worst thing in the world. It could be worse, for sure, so having this is nice. And of course, with max investment, Sprint DX roll on level 150, almost 1,000 HP. That's really good, for sure. 363 physical defense, 373 special defense. Definitely a good assist there in the stats. These are very, very solid stats. And 336 speed is a pretty decent help to his speed stat as well, so we will take that. And again, 316 special attack, giving him relatively respectable offense as well for being a support, right? Because we do have damage dealers with worse stats, for sure, i.e., Anniversary Steven. Actually, I think Stevens might be... No, Stevens is worse, really. It's literally worse. 306 in both offenses. That's pretty sad. But of course, Steven does have an actual multiplier, and sure, so there's that, I guess. But point is, of course, that offensive stat's actually at least somewhat helpful to Bede. So that is something. Anyway, looking at his damaging options, he's got Freezing Glare, which is a 4-gauge, at minimum 156 base power move with a 10% chance to freeze. This is good, right? 156 power, you're actually making utilization of that offensive stat, with the full investment. Confusion for a 1-gauge spammable move with a 10% confusion rate. Nice. And Intimidating Freezing Glare, his buddy move, which is 170 power, and it never misses. It's activated whenever sync countdown is reduced by 3 while the move is deactivated. And the activation countdown is not reduced when the remaining NP is 0, so of course you do have to have NP on it as well. And it's deactivated, of course, when the move is used. It never misses, it's got a 10% freeze rate, it raises the defenses of all allies by 1, and applies free moves next to all allies. This is only one use, of course, but with it, may as well spoil his kit a little bit. He's got Bal and Leia Teachings, which restores 1 NP to the user's moves after your team's sync pair uses their sync move. So that is not bad, for sure. This is effectively an infinite use buddy move, but of course it is, over the course of 3 turns, right, pretty much. Whenever you use your sync move on your team, it is infinitely restorable that way. So there is, again, pretty much unlimited usage to this, which is nice, for sure. But of course it is time-gated, so it's not like you can max out your defenses with minor issues. You still, of course, are going to have to take quite a bit of time to do that, but that's not really too bad. He's got himself the trainer move Triumphant Tenacity, which is probably where a lot of his hype comes from, I would say. It's a 4-gauge 2-use move that raises both attack, special attack, and crit. Sorry, all special attack, and crit by 2 stat ranks, and increases the physical and special moves next of all allies by 1. All in one move. That is very good. This gives him great mixed buffing capability, where he's going to be able to help out pretty much any DPS damage, damage dealing character, with, of course, efficiency and getting their offenses buffed, as well as actually increasing their direct damage with the moves up next. So there's a versatile support, and of course the only drawback is the 4 gauge usages, which can be of course remedied by different team building, but it can also be remedied by the innate benefit of having the free moves next on his intimidating freezing glare. So you can of course use freezing glare, the buddy freezing glare, get the free moves next, and then use the trainer move here with absolutely 0 drawback. That is very nice. So that is pretty much how he's designed, and of course you can work around that. You can just build a gauge efficient team and you don't even have to worry about having free moves next. The 4 gauges might not be that bad to deal with. That's true. Moving on to the passive skills, he's got Galar Flagbearer, which is a maximum of a 30% power buff and damage reduction of 26% when the whole team, of course, has Galar allies. So that is nice too. That's a pretty nice buff. Galar Flagbearer, Flagbearer tends to be a lesser buff than Pride or what's the other one? Spirit. But of course, that's also because this buffs all moves, not just the physical or special side. So that is very nice to have there. And just as a supportive character that's going to be on a very big range of teams, just even having, the 1/3 of this passive actually activated is going to be helpful. Again, it does still power up moves by 10% and applies 20% damage reduction without any Galar allies besides himself. So that's going to be very, very, very helpful. So we do love to see that. He's got himself Conniving Wings, which is a passive skill. Duh. Reduces sync countdown by 1 the first time the user enters battle, and raises speed of all allies by 2 the first time the user enters a battle, each battle. Sure, I guess. Either way, it gives a little bit of speed buffing ability, which is nice, and of course the -1 sync countdown, which is more helpful for, of course, sync ramping, but again, still helpful for the intimidating freezing glare buff, right? So that is also very helpful. And again, we mentioned Balonlea Teachings, which restores MP after using the team's sync move. We don't have to go much else into detail of that. This gives you infinite usage of his buddy move and trainer move, right? So consider this. This is effectively infinite special attack, crit, and physical attack buffing, and more importantly, physical and special moves next. Just, of course, you have to have the team use their sync move, so it is a little limited in that regard. And then Vigilance, protecting him from crits. This opens up your lucky skill slot. Yeah, I can speak. Lucky skill slot to being whatever you want it to be, whether that be Head Start 1 or Adrenaline 1 for more sync countdown, especially combined with the Sprint EX roll up here, so Adrenaline could have far better benefits. Mind Games for special defense debuffs, physical defense debuffs with Defense Crush if you run him on a physical-oriented team, or whatever else, right? There's plenty of other pretty solid lucky skills that he can run and be very effective at, or very effective with, so that is definitely nice. And in terms of the grid, Unflappable and Antifreeze, not really too much worth mentioning, but just Bede's kit as a whole, this is not bad, for sure. The defensive stats are already good. He's able to buff his defenses by himself anyway. He's got himself the effectively infinite offense buffing and offense enhancement. Again, it does require the usage of the team's sync move, but still, for the most part, in any long battle, you're going to be really noticing the infinite usage of the buddy move and the trainer move, which is, of course, always good. He does have the option between using Freezing Glare for potential freeze fishes or, damage, right? 156 power, 300 offensive stat, whatever. Or Confusion if you're trying to be gauge efficient, or, go for Confusion, whatever it may be, right? So Bede does have very, very good general supportive capability, and he does have the potential to do a little bit of damage on top of that with his freezing glares. Not really his sync move as much, because you do consider he also doesn't have any actual multipliers. He's mostly working off base power and an offensive stat, but still, for a character that's relegated to being a support, not an actual dedicated damage dealer, the fact that he can do any damage at all is going to be relatively impressive, because it's pretty much just an extra bonus on top of what he's already meant to do. So we do love to see that. My only issue with Bede is that at 1 out of 5, his gauge management is not fantastic. He only buffs team speed by 2, which is less than what I would prefer, for sure, but, it's still something at the very least. And he does not have any method of healing. As long as I can confirm that, yeah, he's not got any method of healing, no gradual healing, no synchro healing, no potions, of course, obviously, no first aid 4, nothing like that. He doesn't have any source of healing, so he's pretty much stuck to, I'm taking this damage and I cannot really recover without having another character that has, potions or healing methods or whatever it may be, right? And that does suck a good bit, but this still does give him good value in shorter battles where the damage you take doesn't really matter. You're mostly trying to clear the enemy, kill the enemy before they kill you, and you're not really worried too much about, defensive utility. You're more worried about, how fast you can buff offenses, which, as we've, stated, Bede is good at. He buffs both types of offenses and crit by 2 in 1 turn, as well as increasing the physical and special moves next by 1 as well. So he's got that pretty fast, you can say it's a little about average paced buffing, but you can also then say he does it for any character, basically. He's not dedicated to a special side, he's not dedicated to a physical side of things. He can do it for any character, and he's good at it, which is, of course, really, really good. And I do appreciate that at 1 out of 5 about Bede, for sure. But of course, he is going to be getting better with dupes, probably fixing a lot of his issues. 2 out of 5 gets Post Haste 3, Hostile Environment 2, Gauge Refresh on Freezing Glare, Confusion, Gauge Refresh 9, Charging Confusion 9 on Freezing Glare, and then Confusion Aggravation 9 as well, and Natural Remedy Quick Cure. Natural Remedy? What? Quick Cure? Why can I not speak? What is my problem? I should drink some water, man. Anyway, so, yes, I took a swig of water. So Bede's got more gauge management abilities with this. This does help out, of course, because of his lack of team gauge management. Having the Confusion move Gauge Refresh 9 is very helpful. This basically means he does not use Gauge when using Confusion. That can be helpful in both any fight where you're pretty bad on Gauge. In terms of team gauge management, and of course it's very good in the Gauntlet as well for being able to manage your gauges and not have to worry too much about, of course, your gauges. That's the point, right? You can use Confusion, use 1 gauge, get 1 gauge back, and you can still be charging gauge for maybe a usage of Freezing Glare or whatever it may be, or of course the Buddy move, or Trainer move rather, sorry. So Gauge Refresh 9 is always very helpful on these 1 gauge spammable moves. It just basically makes the character not use gauge. So you can focus your gauge upon characters that actually, need it. Confusion Aggravation 9 for guaranteed confusion when attacking the enemy. That is also very nice. Not only for, of course, having the enemy potentially hit themselves in confusion or deactivating different passive skills and whatnot, but also the Charging Confusion 9 on Freezing Glare, charging gauge by 2 when attacking a confused opponent. This just helps out his gauge efficiency even more, and again, this does allow you to be able to run Freezing Glare a little bit more consistently as a damaging option, so you'll be able to do some somewhat decent damage depending on what you're fighting. Of course, in like a Gauntlet solo or a duo, he's going to be probably a main player in terms of damage, I would guess, but of course in like Stadium or Ultimate Battles, whatever it may be, I guess, the little bit of extra damage is nice, and being able to manage your gauge on top of it is equally nice. And then Hostile Environment 2 as well, that just makes the gauge refresh look a little bit better here too, because that gives you, a 30% chance to freeze, makes it more appealing to go for Freezing Glare just outside of damage dealing. So that is also very nice. And you also do have Gauge Refresh 3 on Freezing Glare, so you can potentially get up to 3 gauges back when using a 4 gauge move. Pretty good, for sure. Post Haste 3 for having a 40% chance to raise speed by 2 when hit by an attack move. I think this is mostly just a Gauntlet ability. This does just help out his gauge efficiency even more in that aspect, and frankly, that is very helpful for sure. Having a lot of gauge efficiency abilities when having 4 gauge moves as your main damaging option and buffing option, being able to just manage your gauge as easily as possible in a solo setting is nice. Prevents the need of running a skill like Fast Track or something. Of course, you still could, and you could just skip this on the grid, but for the most part, still, this is a far more consistent tile than Fast Track, and it is still obviously pretty cheap to pick up, so that is nice. Outside of the Gauntlet, I'm not sure if this node has much value. I'd have to think about it more, but for the most part, you could mostly just rely upon someone else in like a 3v3 setting, like Stadium, Battle Rally, Ultimate Battle, whatever, to help apply gauge management. I wouldn't really rely on this because it is only buffing his stats, not the whole team. If it was the whole team, it'd be a different story, for sure. And then other than that, Natural Remedy and Quick Cure, refreshing status conditions and status changes the first time they're inflicted could be good for less resets in some event where enemies have a higher chance of a status condition or a status change. That's nice, sure. And then, of course, 3 out of 5, he's going to be getting everything else he needs. Adrenaline 1, Curative Confusion 1, Recuperation, I'm not saying that, Team Sharp Entry 1, Entry Freebie, Team First Super Sync, and then Shielded and Barricade Buddies on Buddy Freezing Glare. pretty good tiles, especially because they all have negative 14 energy combined. That is nice. So Team Sharp Entry just makes his crit buffing a lot faster. I would not say this node is worth too much, frankly, but it does, of course, allow you to max crit without having to use the trainer move more than once. There's obviously good value in that. I mean, in some areas, right? But for the most part, just use the trainer move twice. I would not worry about having to pick up Team Sharp Entry, especially when everything else in his grid is already really good. Recuperation too. This does give him better healing. This is the healing we wanted, right? Combined with Curative Confusion, which restores HP when attacking a confused enemy. This gives him gradual healing, this gives him immediate healing, and this is pretty much what he needed, right? Of course, the biggest issue still is that he does not have team healing. He's got team defensive enhancement with the usage of the buddy move and shielded and barricade buddies on the buddy move, making this defense buffing faster for himself and the team, but he still does not have healing for the team itself, he does not have healing for the team, just himself, right? That is fine, though. I mean, for a solo or something, or a duo potentially, this can be fine, just running these nodes and being able to, recover HP pretty consistently. That can be fine, that can be good. But for, of course, any longer battle, like an ultimate battle, where you're going to be pretty reliant upon needing team healing, he can struggle in that regard. I think just because of that, a lot of Bede's great usability comes in the Legendary Gauntlet and, of course, like shorter battles such as the Battle Rally and Champion Stadium, where Bede's not really going to be worrying too much about having to heal up. It's going to be a shorter battle, or he's not going to worry about the team healing, right? You can still heal him, of course, with his 2 nodes here, but for the most part, not having to worry about team healing is pretty nice in a lot of shorter battle content, and it's pretty effective too. But I think just because of his lack of team healing, he's not fantastic in ultimate battles because of that, but of course he released before them, so that does make sense too. But even still, like for shorter ultimate battles, or where your team's damage output is so high that ultimate battles become a shorter battle, then at that point Bede would probably be a good support, just because, again, of his general enhancive ability, and still decent enough defensive utility in buffing both team defenses. So there is something to work with there. And combined with the Sprint EX roll, and Adrenaline 1 as a passive skill, Adrenaline 1 as a potential lucky skill, Head Start 1 as a potential lucky skill, and the Sync 1 -1 sync countdown on his entry, he can work very, very well with a lot of potential sync ramping characters for pretty much any stage. Like Champion Marnie with her sync countdown is pretty nice. Champion Silver with his EX roll plus the sync countdown he does is pretty nice. And of course there's probably other examples as well, but just for some high-powered options, those are a few to consider. So Bede does work quite well for sync acceleration, just because of all the sync acceleration abilities he's got, which is great. So there's that too. And then I guess Entry Freebie and Team First Super Sync. Entry Freebie can be good for, of course, managing gauge early on. You can get yourself a usage or 2 of the trainer move without having to worry pretty much at all about gauges. That can be very valuable in a shorter battle content. And then Team First Super Sync, applying super effective next to all allies after using the sync move, could be good again for clearing pretty much any stage, I would say, but mostly like any really durable content where you're going to be using a super effective damage dealer, this is still going to have value. Like maybe bring Bede to the Palmer Ultimate Battle or something, and then you can use this, give Ray super effective next or something like that, and then you can use the buddy move. Just a thought like that. That's just one team that I can think about, or one set that I can think about that's going to be pretty beneficial, to say the least. So that is nice. Though I don't think it's a super good node compared to everything else that he's got. And like the healing for himself is great for the Legendary Gauntlet. Same thing with the team defenses, though these team defenses are more usable pretty much anywhere, right? Adrenaline is nice as well. And a few other nodes, like the gauge efficiency is good pretty much just anywhere, and the freeze could be clutch depending on if you can proc it or not. Freezing at a 30% chance is not horrible. Definitely not consistent, but definitely not horrible either. So just food for thought, frankly. But I do like Bede's kit, both at 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, and 3 out of 5, frankly. At 1 out of 5, of course, you still maintain that very, very good team general offensive enhancement ability. At 3 out of 5, he gains more defensive utility, mostly for himself, but of course he does gain the faster defensive buffing for the whole team, so he is good in that regard too. And I'd say at 2 out of 5 is when he gains a lot of gauge efficiency. So 1 out of 5, he's got good offensive utility. 2 out of 5, he gets good gauge management, and 3 out of 5, he gets good defensive ability. So I guess he gains, one crucial aspect at each move level. So that I guess that is something to probably consider. But anyway, I do like Champion Bede overall as a support. I do think he's still got some pretty decent value. Do I think he's the best support ever? No. And of course, his general offensive buffing ability has been either replaced by characters like Champion Rosa, or of course, it can still be kind of replicated by other characters that have been recently released, such as like some Racerola, right? She can buff pretty much all stats other than like evasion and accuracy. Maybe with dupe she can do that, I don't remember. But of course she can buff physical and special moves next as well. So Bede's of course, aged, I guess, in that regard, but he still does gain, or still does hold a lot of value, because it's not like those abilities are bad, or he's suddenly outclassed. And some characters, of course, did outclass him, but not like every character did in that regard. It's still that he's good, right? He's still good, and he's still got good utility, being able to buff the offenses, being able to buff the defenses. The sync acceleration is very nice, and again, he did gain the Sprint DX roll, which gives him more sync acceleration, and he does gain some more offensive stats, so potentially could do some DPS with him. That's always fun. A damage dealing support. Gotta love that. Anyway, that's my thoughts about Champion Bede and Articuno on their rerun. Let me know if you're going to be going for them down in the comments below. I probably will be doing some summons for them, at least right before they leave, just because I do want to actually have this character. Articuno is my favorite of the legendary birds. If I could admit, I would prefer to not miss Hop, but I would really rather save my gems for the anniversary. But Bede, I'm pretty keen on getting myself. But, of course, don't let my decisions influence you at all. It's mostly just for me, not really for Bede's kit or him as a character or anything like that. Just for what I personally want. And I would say just go for him only if you are a big fan of him or Articuno, or you really like the kit or whatever it may be, right? Always save for the anniversary, though. Be sure you see what that is, because it could always be more hype, 100%. But yeah, I'll see you all later. I hope you all enjoyed. Good luck on your summons. Good luck on your skipping. Anniversary is coming up very, very soon. So let's pray. And yeah, I'll see you all later.